So we wanted to create a platform where we could invite people that are doing way more than us, and then pretty much getting free coaching lessons for a whole hour.
Having a podcast as a real estate agent is one of the best ways to not just scale and amplify your personal brand, but also to connect with incredible industry leaders and scale your real estate team or have people partner with you. The issue is that most people don't properly know how to create, launch, and scale a real estate podcast. And here's the craziest stat. There's over 2 billion active monthly users on platforms like Instagram, billions on TikTok, hundreds of millions on YouTube. There's about 330,000 podcasts, and about 120,000 are actually putting out podcasts every single week. And if you break down that 120,000 into industries and niche specifics, you can only fathom that you're really only competing against a handful of other people instead of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of agents on every other platform. The opportunity is absolutely insane and it is widely untapped, but you need to know where to get started. And that's where my good friend John Michael Perez is coming on today, as he has one of the top 10, actually top 5 ranking podcasts in the entire real estate industry. And he's going to talk about how he started it, how he gets guests, and what it's been able to do to skyrocket his personal brand and his business on a local level, even not just adding agents to his real estate team, but getting clients and more closed deals. So before we get started, 2 quick things. Number 1, I will link all of John's incredible content below, including his podcast, Real Estate Virgins, and I'm also going to link his calendar link below in case you would like to get his one-on-one support to help you launch your podcast as well for free in order to scale your personal brand. So without further ado, let's dive into the tactical strategies of how to create a successful real estate podcast and the ninja tricks you can do in order to make sure it becomes wildly successful and profitable. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another incredibly exciting conversation where today we're going to be talking about something that I get asked a lot about, which is podcasting. And I think podcasting is one of the most underutilized, ripe opportunities that not many agents are properly tapping into. And I'll get into some of the data here in a second. But John Michael Perez here has an incredible podcast that's worked wonders for scaling his brand and also his team. And we're going to unpack, how that was the case and what to do if you're looking to start a podcast as an agent and scale your influence. So John, super excited to have you here, man. What's going on?
Super excited to be here. Doing great. How are you?
Good, man. I think this is going to be so cool because I've seen the people you've connected with and, the value that you've brought from your podcast. And I know that this is such an underutilized opportunity by agents. And I think we'll change people's perspective as we start going through this. But, for anybody that doesn't yet know who you are, why don't you just give a quick rundown as to who you are, where you're from, what kind of got you here, and then we'll start diving in.
Yeah, John Michael Perez, born and raised in South Texas. Now we live in Austin, Texas. I was a server for 8 years, and also during that time was in a heavy metal band, toured the U.S., had fun, made $0. And one day I Googled how to become a millionaire, and the third option was real estate. So I called my wife, fiance at the time. I'm like, hey, I think I'm getting real estate. She goes, how are you going to do that? I said, I'm going to pay $900 to be a part of these in-person classes. And she goes, where are you going to get $900? And now she's downstairs watching our kids. She doesn't have to work. And she orders stuff on Amazon every day from all the houses I'm selling. But yeah, that's who I am.
I think that's awesome, man. You've got an incredible story, and I know that we've unpacked that on some of the other collab videos that we've done. But let's start talking about podcasting. Why don't you give people a quick idea as to what your podcast is, and then I want to kind of segue into what actually made you start a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So we found there's a lot of agents that just need knowledge. And so, there's a lot of agents, especially during a shifting market, where they're like, hey, my broker really isn't giving me enough information. So I'm going to go out and go out and seek that knowledge from, other platforms, like some of the audience that you're coming to. And what's really cool is the agents that are actually searching for more knowledge are the hungry agents, right? And so that's the type of agents we want to be around. And so we started a podcast just because, one, we wanted to start building influence within the real estate industry, as well as it's really cool to be able to leverage other people's influence and audience, right? And so what happens is that, you can start building up your influence by leveraging other people's influence. And so, that podcast has been doing great. We're top 10, consistently top 10. I looked this morning, I think we're number 4 as real estate agent podcasts. And so it's super fun, and yeah, cool.
That's awesome. Well, what we're going to dive into, what this can do to scale your brand and some of the logistics around podcasting. But, one of the things that, my friend talks about, who actually helps people like run their podcasts, is some of the data behind podcasting, right? When you look at, Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, there's like 6 million YouTube channels. There's 6 billion, like, it's insane what's on YouTube. There's 2 billion active users on TikTok. There's 2 billion active users on Instagram. Like, it's absolute insanity. And when you start breaking down the podcast kind of data, there is less than 350,000 podcasts that are considered active, meaning posting on a monthly basis. And there's something like 120,000 that are posting on a weekly basis. And when you look at that, if you break that 120,000 down by industry and by niche, you're now going from competing against like 100,000 or 1 million agents actively posting on these other platforms versus like 10, 20, 50 people that are actively doing podcasting. So we look at the opportunity to actually scale based on data. There's so much more room to scale when it comes to podcasting. So when it comes to launching your podcast, what was kind of the thought process that you created in terms of your end goal with it, or what kind of got you excited about the opportunity to start to feature people on your podcast?
Well, there's that Harvard study that 90% of your success is based off of your peer group, right? So we wanted to create a platform where we could invite people that are doing way more than us, and then pretty much getting free coaching lessons for a whole hour, right? But what's really cool is these people, they want to share their knowledge. A lot of times, they want to share their knowledge. And so we realized, like, hey, if we can share everything, put it all on the table for agents that want to learn and need to know more, and then invite guests and then share that to their guests, to their audience as well, it's just it's a compounding effect. It just grows and grows and grows. And like you said earlier, there's really, in our industry, there's not enough podcasters, right? At least active podcasters. And so there's such an opportunity to be at the top if you're just consistent. And I know there was a statistic that said if you get past 7, I think most people don't get past 7 episodes. And so once we got past 7, we're like, okay, I think we're in,
Yeah. And I think that's the mindset that you need to go into anything with, is that, if you can't do it for a lifetime, don't do it for a day. If you're not going to commit to this for the long haul, because, social media in general is delayed gratification. Podcasting is on a completely different level. And I think it's important for people to look at this and not say, I'm doing this to make money. I'm doing this to build my brand, build influence, connect with new people. And I think you hit the nail on the head, which is that having an opportunity to invite people is that value-driven, leading with value kind of approach of saying, hey, I'm going to feature you here. And that in turn allows you to learn, build those relationships and things. Whereas most people are, like, hey, they see a top producer, somebody that's crushing in the market. Can I take you for a coffee and basically steal an hour of your time? Well, they're not going to get anything out of that, but you will. And that's not mutual. Whereas when you look at a podcast, a YouTube channel, or anything like that, by having them on, that scales their brand. So they get something out of it, but simultaneously you do as well if you ask the right questions. And the last thing I want to just touch on there is helping people understand the importance of the 3 different types of media. You've got paid media, owned media, and earned media. So paid media is going to be like paid advertising, Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, whatever. Owned media is going to be organic content, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And then you look at earned media, which is the ability to leverage other people's audiences. And I think when people are coming to you and they've got an audience and they share that on their Instagram, story or whatever the situation is, that now gets you in front of all these new people as well. So I really like that you've taken that approach and kind of poured into people with this opportunity. Now, when getting started with your podcast, I think this is what trips a lot of people up is they say, okay, I'm going to start a podcast, but like, what equipment what do I need to get started? Like, how do I get started? Like, it's always that sticking point of, I want to do it. I've got all these great ideas, but like, where do I go?
No, I'm not going to lie. I did, I've already sold a decent amount of houses. So I did have a budget to hire out because that's one thing I didn't want to do is spend hours editing, spend hours recording. I just wanted to walk in and then walk out and then get all the files, right? So I will say, there's very affordable options from the very beginning, maybe $100 per episode. There's people out there that it's still an emerging industry, podcasting for other people, having your own studio. And so there's a big opportunity for affordable studios as well. We go to one that's a little bit more higher level. We walk in, we walk out, they give us the files, and it's done, edited and everything. But for sure, if you don't have that budget, this is a great tip, is partner up with lenders, partner up with title companies, partner up with your local vendors as well, and they may be able to pay for some of your episodes due to the fact that you're promoting them as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think creating leverage is so important, and I think that's what it comes down to is being able to leverage other partnerships and leverage your time, because all that podcasting is essentially is conversations at scale and being able to build that influence with other people. And it's a really great way, because I find when people look at short form content or traditional long form like YouTube, a lot of agents have not yet maybe built up the communication skills to deliver a powerful, tactical, value driven like banger of a video in a short amount of time, whereas podcasting almost lets you ease into that content creation perspective of saying, hey, it's a lot more conversational, it's a lot more natural, you don't have to like put on this energy or this front or be able to like constantly bang out these one-liners. Like, you're just genuinely having an open, honest conversation, and especially if you're the one just asking the questions, right? And if you ask the right questions, you're going to get some pretty incredible answers. But when you look at podcasting in general, a question that I have for you is do you also go on other people's podcasts? Because that's going to lean into something that I'm excited to kind of jam out about. But I think there's hosting people, and then there's featuring people, getting featured rather on other platforms. So do you do both?
Yeah, absolutely. I get invited on podcasts all the time. It's a great opportunity to build your brand, and also from the other side of the spectrum, share their podcast to your audience. And it's great. And, one of the best pieces of advice I can give for somebody that's starting off podcasting is, one, invite other people, other top producers, or whatever podcast that you're wanting to do. Invite that expert in that industry, right? And then also, you've got to ask great questions. And one thing, honestly, I just put questions in iPhone notes, right? Just in my notes, and I put them there, and then I put it in my lap. And then sometimes I'll while they're talking, before the podcast even starts, I say, hey, if I'm looking at my phone, I'm just looking at the next question, right? And then they'll say, oh, okay, cool. And so when they're answering a question, I'll look down just to get a brief reminder of what the next question is. And then just always, be prepared with great questions, as well as do some research on your guest as well.
Yeah, I think that actually is a really great talking point, because a lot of people are going to ask, what do I even ask, right? Like, where do I start with the questions in order to make sure that, I talked to people a couple of weeks ago about podcasts, and that was one of the things that came up was, what do I ask people and how do I find the right questions? Do you want to kind of unpack how you go through like research and then how you sort of cultivate that list of questions?
Yeah, so if it's an expert in their field, generally I do start off with the Google search.
Yeah.
I'll search on Google, I'll search on YouTube, and I'll look at some of the quotes that they've said. If they've written a book, I'll read their book or read their Audible or listen to their Audible, and then I'll ask questions based off of what their expertise is. You know, like when Suman Kim was on our podcast, and he was a YouTube expert, you know, just like you are. You know, we're asking him like detailed questions based off of the of his expertise. So, for example, one of the questions we asked him was, "What does that handoff look like from when somebody reaches out to you from YouTube?" And you actually convert that into a lead, you know? And he answered that question amazing because he's the expert. And so, and a lot of times the questions that we ask are questions that we genuinely want to know because it may help our business as well.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because one of the things that I could kind of like sum up that response with is being able to put yourself in the consumer's shoes. And I think when you can think from, you know, that all starts from understanding who your audience is. And then once you understand who your audience is, you can now think from their lens and say, what would they be asking? What would be valuable to them? Because at the end of the day, those are the people that are listening, right? And I think that's important to really understand the demographics and psychographics and everything about like who is your target avatar with this podcast and what do they care about? Because that's going to be a really easy way to lead into the right type of questions, but putting yourself in the shoes of them. So I think that's awesome. And you know, even just to echo how podcasting and collaborative content has helped my, you know, life is when you can give before going for the ask. What I've always found is like, I wanted to collaborate with these really strong agents with bigger audiences, bigger influence, the Joshua Smiths and all these people back in when I got started. And it's, you know, it's kind of hard pressed for you to just ask to be on theirs, and nobody likes being selfish. So when you can invite them to yours, if you knock it out of the park, every single time at the end of that, they're going to be like, "Oh, dude, that was so awesome. Thanks so much. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you." Well, I wouldn't mind being on yours either if the opportunity ever arises. And I think it's that mutual exchange of value where you get to prove yourself first and pour into them. And that naturally segues based on what you talked about, the law of reciprocity. They almost feel guilty by saying, well, they know they've got a podcast and they know you're trying to build your brand. So what are they going to do? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Are you thinking about starting a podcast?
Oh, we're starting one. Yep. So that's
Oh
going to
yeah.
be coming down the pipeline. So for anybody that's curious, you know, that's been a big goal in the new house, is building out an insane multi-person in-person podcast setup in the new basement. So I've got some pretty wild stuff coming in. It's going to be looking out at the lake, flying people in to do content. So we're about to go to that next phase. So, and again, I
Let's
think,
go.
you know, that actually leads to a really great topic of conversation, which is timing and understanding platforms. Because I've wanted to start a podcast for over 2.5 years, but I also realized that YouTube was what was bringing business to me. It was my bread and butter. It allowed me to be efficient. So I latched onto that. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is I had the means, the skill set, the funds to start a podcast 2.5 years ago. But I'm only doing it probably in January because of the fact that I had to be mindful of saying, does this fit into my business perfectly right now? And is this where I should be channeling my focus? Like, if you're going to be starting a podcast, go all in on that podcast and don't be concerning yourself so much with the TikTok, the reels and the shorts and things like that. You can repurpose your podcast for that, but not creating individual content, because if you chase too much, you're going to struggle to be consistent. Right. And for me, I've always won on consistency. So I think it's important for people to be mindful of like, where does and when does podcasting fit into their business? Now, when it comes to launching a podcast, one of the things that I'm always curious about are, did you make any mistakes in the beginning that people can maybe learn from? Or is there anything that you wish you knew, you know, back then that you now know based on repetition and experience?
Well, at the very beginning, I didn't think that I could talk for 45 minutes to an hour without tripping up. And what I realized is that just like you said earlier, it's very conversational,
Yeah.
and we set those expectations from the very beginning, even before we press record, is we tell our guests, hey, this is just a conversation. I'm asking you questions just like any other conversation, right? And so that really helps a lot of the experts that may have not have been on a podcast before. They start thinking of it, oh yeah, we're just talking, it's not some big thing. Um, and then also, one really cool thing is at the beginning, I used to edit everything, and it was a lot of work. Um, I will say, as soon as you are able to leverage out experts that are able to do it, a lot of times it's VAs from the overseas, and you're paying them really good from their perspective to edit videos that they're already really good at doing, and they'll get it out really quickly.
Yeah.
And so we cut up our content to make several pieces of content throughout the week, just because we want to be as consistent as possible with our content, and it just shows because people are constantly reaching out to us, asking us more questions about what we talked about in the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, a lot of people know that they can do something, so that they do it themselves. And I think not enough agents look at their dollar per hour value and say, should I even be doing this? Right? Like, if you can hire an editor for, $5 an hour from the Philippines, or, $10-15 from somewhere else, like, if you're doing that activity yourself, you're basically valuing yourself at $5 an hour. Like, how are you going to make 6-7 figures a year? You never will, right? Because you're trading so much time for these low income producing activities. And where people need to go with this is saying, hey, I'm going to outsource this, look at it as an investment, not an expense. And then I'm going to take that time and reallocate it to creating 2 more episodes or volume, because again, people just don't really have that right perspective. But when we look at this, I would love to kind of dive into what it's done for your business, because a lot of people are going to say, well, who's listening to this? Is anybody listening to this? Do I need thousands of views to even make it worth listening to? And what is this going to do for me? Because I think for you, as a strong team leader, a top producer, it's been really cool to see what this has been able to do to help scale your brand, get you in front of more people, help you become seen as like an industry authority, but also have people partnering with you that are the right fit because they already know you.
Yeah, it's really cool to be in a coffee shop and somebody comes in and they're like, "Hey, John, are you from Real Estate Virgins podcast?" Or also, a couple weeks ago, and it may have been a month ago, I was in line to get my coffee, and there was a lady behind me, and she goes, "John?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hey, what's up?" She goes, "I heard from your podcast that all the top agents are at this coffee shop, right?" I'm like, "Whoa, that's cool." So agents are actually listening to this podcast and going to the coffee shop that we talked about on the podcast. So it's just really cool, the branding, the influence, and just that consistency. And you can't treat it like a hobby, unfortunately, but it's super fun. You've got to be consistent. You've got to treat it like an actual job. But it's not really a job when you love doing it.
Yeah.
And so for me, we have a set day every single week to record a podcast. My assistant, she looks for guests. She also helps us on the back end. She uploads the episodes. And what's really cool is agents actually can go back to episodes just like in YouTube. It's a library of knowledge, and it's never going to go away unless we take it off. And so just like YouTube, people are searching for real estate agent leads or real estate agent Austin, Texas. And you can be one of that pieces of content at the very top if you're consistent.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I think, it just strengthens your understanding as well of where opportunities lie in the market based on, learning from other people. I've seen you guys feature people about YouTube or Instagram Reels, and like for you to now be able to feature these guests, pour into value, but be able to apply those principles to your own business is such a great way to basically get an hour of free coaching and be able to just jam out and hang out with cool people and build those relationships. Now, when it comes to like the actual preparation of your podcast and that consistency, I think a lot of people are also curious as to how often do you need to post? When are you posting? Like, is there a best cadence, or like, what does that structure look like for you in terms of how far are you booking out? How often are you posting? Is there a time that you post? Like, just kind of those foundational elements of the execution of it and the releasing of it.
Yeah, so you don't want to overanalyze and then underperform, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing is when we first started, we did spend a lot of time on research and stuff like that. But like you said earlier, the more time you spend on non-money generating activities, the more non-money will be going into your bank account, right? and so for us, after a decent amount of episodes, it's starting to become natural. We're just walking in, we're just asking great questions. But I'm sorry, what was your question again? I apologize.
Yeah, just like, frequency of posting and how often, when, that type of thing, just to have people understand, like, if I'm going to get started, what sort of expectations should I put on myself that will actually yield results? Like for me on YouTube, I tell people, it's like, if you post once a week, like that's better than nothing. But the outcome and the data behind 2 times a week is much more than a 2-time multiple of 1 a week. So I always advise people to say, hey, if you're serious about this, 2 a week is the best. So from your experience on podcasting, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's actually very similar. And so we look at Joe Rogan, like he puts an episode out like 3-4 times a week, and he's extremely consistent. He's always bringing experts in. Right now, we do 1 quality episode a week very consistently, but we're also going to be adding a mini episode as well, something that's like more mindset, more positivity at the very beginning of the week. And then we put in that long form at the end of the week. And so now we're going to be just very similar to YouTube, is that two times a week, but one doesn't have to be a whole hour long, right? And agents that are listening to the entire podcast, they start knowing you. And so when you meet them in person, that's one thing we're going to start implementing, is events surrounding the actual podcast. And so now people know us more than just, an image. It's actually a conversation, And so, yeah, that's pretty much the frequency, about 2 times a week. Very similar to YouTube.
That's awesome. And I think that gives people confidence that, they can get started and improve over time. And I think it's important for people to not, look at, John's podcast right now and look at the setup, or look at my YouTube videos right now and look at the setup and understand, like, we had to get started somewhere. We were consistent for a long period of time. We were able to invest into our business and improve it. And I think the most important part is to actually get started and then start to improve over time as your communication skills get better, as you make more income, reinvesting that into your business. So, as we kind of pull this full circle, is there any best piece of advice you have for people that are saying that they're going to launch a podcast, whether it be how to reach out to guests, or what kind of your process is there? Like, what's some of the tactical advices to say, I'm going to start, I want these heavy hitters to come, but like, how the heck do I get them to come,
Yeah. So at the very beginning, you may, 100% honesty, you may not be able to get heavy hitters. So just get top producers or agents that have never been on a podcast before, and it's a new experience, right? And then once you get those top producers, that may have never been on a podcast, you can tell other top producers that have bigger audiences, hey, we've had these other top producers on the podcast. We'd love for you to be on the podcast as well. And then once you it's basically like a stepping stone, right? And then also you can do that in any industry, right? And then also you can do research on people's friends as well, right? So if you see the guy that you really want on the podcast and you find out their friend is also in that market, you could maybe ask their friend to be on the podcast and then ask for a connection, right? And so that's just one opportunity as well to get bigger guests. And then now that we're consistently within the top 10, we tell guests that we say, hey, we'd love for you to be on the podcast. We about have 900 to 1,000 listeners per month, or whatever. And then would you like to be in one of our episodes? And a lot of times they'll say yes. It's super easy, honestly. A lot of times it's Instagram DMs.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I think, a concept that I think is really important for people is that, you just touched on it right there. You're not saying you've got millions of views every month. Like, it's not like, I think a lot of people get caught up in the vanity metrics of saying, I need thousands of this, tens of thousands or millions of that in order to have the confidence to go speak to somebody or invite somebody. And at the end of the day, if it's 1,000 people per month, that's 1,000 more per month than they're used to. Right. And I think
I will say though, the quality of the listener is very high quality. Right. Yeah. And so like these listeners that are actually listening for an entire episode, they're spending an entire hour listening to me and one other guy or two other people talking. Right. And so the quality of that listener is way more valuable than a view on TikTok, right? 100%. Or a listen from a song on Spotify. That quality of that listener is I will say extremely valuable.
Yeah, and it comes down to watch time, like on YouTube, or listen time on podcasts. Is like the more time you spend, the more repetitions that people get with you, the deeper that relationship becomes, and it creates endowment when they're listening, which is so powerful for being able to connect with you on that emotional level. And that's kind of led to what's been able to help you scale your team and align with so many incredible people that are the right people. Because if they spend hours listening to you, they're going to figure out pretty quickly if they like you. If they don't, well, if they don't, they're not going to reach out. So that gets rid of all the people that would be, cancerous and toxic from a culture perspective. But then the right people are reaching out. So it's a win-win for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're spot on.
All right, man. So as we pull this full circle, people now have a really exciting opportunity to partner with the both of us. And obviously, hearing some of the things you talked about with podcasting, so many people are going to have questions about launching their own, wanting support with that. We've done a video about your insane Facebook group strategies, and you've also built a wildly successful team. So I'd love for you to talk to people about why you made the transition as somebody that, previously, similar to myself, really didn't want to entertain the idea of EXP, but you've now managed to bring your team over here. And I'd love for you to kind of unpack why that's the case. And then also we can dive into what people can expect when partnering with you as well.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, I was one of the biggest EXP haters in the world. I was so annoying. People were just reaching out to me. But I will say this is, as soon as you showed me the amount of value that not only the Wolfpack has, but just the math makes sense when it comes to what EXP offers on the back end as well. It was a no-brainer. I wanted to start my own brokerage. And the liability, the location restriction, and the lack of getting revenue streams from several different ways, it just made so much sense, And then also, I had the ability to hang out with you, Sum, and a lot of the other guys. And, I think I said this earlier, but, that 90% of your success, is from your peer group. And so, I knew that there was going to be another level that I needed to get to. And so me surrounding myself with people like you, with Suman, with agents that are doing 140 deals their second year, like that is just going to naturally rub off. Right. And so if you're an agent out there and you're thinking, man, I don't even know where to get my next deal. Right. Yeah. You need to surround yourself with agents that are doing a lot of deals. right? You need to surround yourself with agents that believe in themselves, have drive, and that's exactly what the Wolfpack has. And not only that, it's like we actually have a library full of how we did it, right?
Yeah.
Like a blueprint of like, all you got to do is step A through Z and you're going to succeed, you know? And if you don't succeed, you probably didn't actually go check out the videos. You probably didn't hang out with us. You probably didn't plug in, you know, and you're going to get what you put in. And it's just so cool to see all the agents succeeding at a massive level.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And I think, you know, what we find right now, especially in the shifting market, is like if you're a solo agent at a traditional brokerage, not only does nobody else have an incentive to help you, which means they don't, but so it's it's competition, whereas this is collaboration. But simultaneously, when you start looking at this, you're the only one rowing your boat, right? And when you're the only one rowing your boat, you can only row on one side of it. Like, how fast can you go? And if you only stay on one side, you're going to go in circles. Whereas when you look at this, there's like, you know, people decide to align with you. They get all of your help with launching a podcast, creating, you know, highly profitable Facebook groups, scaling a local team in addition to building your brand. They get Suman, you know, $2.5 million in GCI in his second year as a new agent from YouTube. They get my help in terms of marketing, branding, advertising, lead gen, and you get 3 layers and more of people that all want to see you win and have a vested interest in helping you scale. And I think that's what people really need to latch onto as the market gets more difficult. If you don't change how you're getting support and trained, you're probably going to be in a worse position in 12 months than you are right now based on how things are looking. So, you know, knowing that, what can people expect when now partnering with both, well, all 3 of us, yourself, Suman, and myself as well?
Well, we train people at a high level. You know, we're there with them, boots on the ground a lot of times, you know, like, and what's funny is we had an agent yesterday call me, say, "Hey, John, you know, I'm super excited. Can you go ahead and give me a call?" It was actually a text. They texted me, "Hey, John, I just had a few questions." Called them instantly, right? And so that's one benefit of partnering up with us is there's always going to be someone to talk to, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, some of us, even though, you know, a lot of us are actually busy, there's going to be someone that will be, you'll be able to talk to. And so partnering with us just means you're going to have resources that no other option is out there. And then also, you know, I've met up with 7 agents within the last few days, and you know, a lot of them, they had the same problem. It was like, I feel like I'm just a number, right?
Yeah.
And there's no relationship involved, right? And there's no community. And what I've seen over the past, you know, few weeks, few months is that there's actually a community that cares about each other, that, like you said, there's no incentive at other brokerages to see you succeed except for the broker, right? Except for the broker. But there's actually an incentive for us to see you succeed because we don't succeed unless you succeed. So it's just such an awesome opportunity that helps people build each other up instead of working against each other, which is like the worst position to be in.
100%, dude. And when you look at, you know, what yourself, Suman, and myself would make on an annual basis and the value we bring and the fact that people get that for free every single month and every single week and every single day when they partner with us, you know, that's tens of thousands of dollars per month that they would be spending on coaching, mentorship programs, wasted time on YouTube trying to figure it out themselves. Like, you can just cut the learning curve, go straight to the path of success, learn from all 3 of our mistakes, go to the blueprint and start scaling immediately. So, you know, I genuinely couldn't be more grateful to be on this journey with you and excited about the impact that we're about to make on agents that come into this with an open mind and truly see why we're changing not just businesses, but lives as well. So guys, if you want to have a conversation with John and or myself, make sure you click that link in the description. You can book a one-on-one on Zoom and we can talk specifically about how we can help your business go to the next level. So John, thank you so much for coming on today again, man.
Super excited to be here, and I'll just say one last thing, if you don't mind, is that I was in a position at one time where I felt like I was a baby dropped in the middle of the forest
Yeah.
and said, "Hey, go figure it out." And until I found the right mentor, until I found the right tribe, I did not see massive results. So if you want to see massive results, then partner up with Mike, partner up with me. We're gonna make sure that you see those massive results that you want.
100%, man. Well, again, guys, there you have it. Please make sure you check out all of John Michael's incredible content, which will be linked below, and book a call if you're ready to scale your business and take it to the next level. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.